Have you ever noticed the strange contradiction in how women's desires are simultaneously obsessed over yet fundamentally misunderstood? That peculiar way society endlessly discusses, analyzes, and attempts to control female desire while remaining profoundly confused about its true nature? Consider how throughout history, male authorities, religious leaders, doctors, philosophers, psychologists have confidently pronounced what women want, need, and should feel, often without bothering to seriously investigate women's actual lived experiences. This contradiction manifests in countless daily moments. The woman whose sexual assertiveness is both demanded and punished, the mother whose maternal devotion is expected yet devalued, the professional whose ambition is simultaneously encouraged and pathologized. For women navigating this landscape, the dissonance creates a particular kind of psychological burden, the exhausting experience of having your innermost desires repeatedly named for you, often incorrectly, while your authentic experiences remain unacknowledged or dismissed. You learn to doubt your own perceptions, to question whether your desires are legitimate if they don't align with what you're told you should want. The internal voice that whispers, "Something doesn't fit," is drowned out by the louder cultural messages about what proper feminine desire should be. And the most insidious part? This misreading of female desire isn't simply an innocent mistake, but has functioned throughout history as a powerful mechanism of control, convincing generations of women that their authentic wants and needs were somehow unnatural, immoral, or pathological if they didn't conform to male-authored narratives. What makes this misreading so persistent is how it infiltrates not just explicit rules and restrictions, but the very framework through which we understand human psychology itself. When women express desires that don't fit established theories, the problem is located in the women rather than in the theories. Her experiences are labeled as exceptions, as neurotic distortions, as failures of proper feminine development. She is pathologized rather than heard. The impact of this persistent misreading extends beyond individual psychology to shape women's material reality, influencing everything from healthcare and educational systems to economic structures and political representation. And perhaps most painfully, it creates unnecessary conflict within women's intimate relationships, where authentic desire collides with expected performance, and genuine connection becomes obscured by prescribed roles. The frustration this generates isn't just a personal dissatisfaction, but a collective female experience stretching across generations, a frustration born not from women's supposedly mysterious nature, but from the stubborn refusal of patriarchal systems to engage with female subjectivity on its own terms. What if our entire framework for understanding female desire has been fundamentally distorted by the biases embedded within psychology itself? What if even our most influential and revolutionary psychological theories that claim to liberate human understanding, actually reinforced particular forms of control and misunderstanding when it came to women? There is a reason why even brilliant, groundbreaking thinkers like Sigmund Freud, who courageously challenged so many social taboos, nonetheless perpetuated profound misreadings of women's desires and experiences. There is meaning in the persistent blind spots that have characterized psychological theories about female desire throughout history. And understanding these blind spots might transform not just how we conceptualize women's psychology, but how we understand the very relationship between gender, power, and the construction of psychological knowledge itself. This is where the fascinating story of Sigmund Freud's complex, contradictory relationship to female desire offers us a revealing window into both the revolutionary potential and the stubborn limitations of psychological theory. While Freud is often simplistically portrayed either as a misogynist villain or an unimpeachable genius, the truth is far more nuanced and illuminating. Freud was indeed revolutionary in many ways. He legitimized the study of sexuality, recognized the psychological impact of childhood experiences, acknowledged the power of unconscious processes, and, perhaps most importantly, actually listened to women's narratives about their lives at a time when women's perspectives were routinely dismissed. Unlike many of his contemporaries, Freud took women's psychological suffering seriously, treating their distress not as meaningless hysteria, but as expressions of genuine psychological conflict worthy of attention and analysis. This represented a significant advance from medical traditions that had pathologized women's bodies and minds, while denying their capacity for rational thought or complex desire. Yet despite these important contributions, Freud's theories about female psychology contained profound limitations and biases that reflected the patriarchal assumptions of his era. Perhaps the most revealing example is found in his concept of penis envy, his assertion that a defining moment in female psychological development occurs when a young girl discovers she lacks a penis and consequently develops envy toward males, resentment toward her mother, whom she blames for her castration, and eventually comes to desire a baby as a substitute for the penis she can never have. This theory, which positions female desire as fundamentally reactive to and envious of male anatomy, reveals much more about the patriarchal biases embedded within psychology than about women's actual psychological development. It frames female desire not on its own terms, but as a secondary compensatory response to male completeness, implying that women's psychological development is fundamentally about coming to terms with lack, rather than developing their own positive sense of embodiment and desire. What's particularly revealing about Freud's theory is not just its obvious patriarchal bias, but the way it misrecognized the actual power dynamics operating in women's lives. When women in late 19th and early 20th century Vienna expressed envy toward men, Freud interpreted this as an anatomical envy, rather than recognizing it as a completely rational response to the profound social, legal, educational, economic, and political advantages that men enjoyed. In other words, if women envied men, it wasn't because men had penises, it was because men had rights, opportunities, freedoms, and forms of social recognition that were systematically denied to women. By locating women's discontent in anatomical lack rather than social inequality, Freud's theory subtly naturalized gender hierarchy, suggesting that women's secondary status reflected their psychological development rather than social arrangements that could and should be changed. If you're finding these perspectives on Freud's theories insightful, please consider giving this video a like to help others discover this content who might be interested in these historical and psychological dynamics. This anatomical explanation for female psychology reveals what might be called the central blind spot in Freud's understanding of women, his inability to fully recognize or theorize female desire as something autonomous and primary, rather than as a reaction to or derivation from male desire. Despite his revolutionary attention to sexuality, Freud fundamentally conceptualized female desire through the lens of male anatomy and male psychological development. His understanding of feminine sexuality remained focused on how women oriented themselves toward men and phalluses, rather than exploring how women might experience their own bodies and desires independently of male reference points. This created a theoretical framework where female desire could only be understood as a variation of or response to male desire, never as something with its own independent logic and development. This blindness to autonomous female desire wasn't simply a personal failing on Freud's part, but reflected broader patriarchal assumptions embedded within Western intellectual traditions. Throughout the history of Western thought, male experience had consistently been positioned as the universal human experience, with female experience framed as a special case, a deviation, or an enigma. When Freud famously asked, "What does a woman want?" a question he claimed never to have definitively answered, he was acknowledging the limitations of his understanding while simultaneously reinforcing the idea that female desire is exceptionally mysterious rather than simply under-theorized within male-centered intellectual frameworks. The question itself positions the male observer as the puzzled but authoritative investigator, and female desire as the elusive object to be captured through proper theory, rather than engaged with on its own terms. Let me pause here for a moment because I need to ask you something that matters. Have you ever felt like you are living two lives at once? The one everyone sees, where you smile and function and pretend everything is fine, and the one inside your head, where you are struggling, confused, doubting every choice you make. That split, that exhausting performance of being okay when you are not, it is something Freud understood deeply. And I want you to know something. You are not broken. You are not weak. You are human. And what you are feeling right now, this exact struggle you are carrying, someone else watching this video is feeling it too. They are sitting there thinking they are the only one, just like you might be thinking right now. So I am going to ask you to do something that might feel vulnerable, but it is important. Go down to the comments right now and type this exact phrase, "I feel this." Just those 3 words, "I feel this." You do not need to explain. You do not need to write your whole story. Just let those words be your voice today, because when you do that, something powerful happens. The person scrolling through these comments, the one who feels completely alone in their pain, they are going to see your comment, and for the first time in maybe days, weeks, or months, they are going to realize they are not alone either. Your 3 words might be the thing that helps them breathe a little easier tonight. This is not just about engagement. This is about connection. This is about breaking the silence that keeps us isolated in our suffering. Freud built his entire life's work on one simple truth. We heal when we speak what has been hidden. So speak it now. Go to the comments. Type "I feel this," and know that by doing so, you are not just helping yourself. You are helping every single person who needs to know that what they feel is real, is valid, and is shared. Do it now. I will wait. What then was the secret female desire that Freud could never fully admit or integrate into his theoretical framework? Paradoxically, it wasn't actually secret at all. Women have been expressing it clearly throughout history, though these expressions have been consistently misinterpreted, pathologized, or dismissed. The desire Freud's theory couldn't properly accommodate was women's fundamental longing for full recognition as autonomous subjects with their own primary desires, ambitions, pleasures, and purposes independent of their relationships to men and children. This desire for recognition as complete humans, rather than as relative beings defined by their relationships to others, represented a fundamental challenge to patriarchal social arrangements that depended on women accepting secondary, supportive, and primarily relational identities. It threatened the entire social order that positioned women as the background against which male achievement and desire could take center stage. When we examine the case histories through which Freud developed his theories, we can see multiple moments where women were expressing precisely this desire for recognition and autonomy, only to have their expressions reinterpreted within frameworks that recentered male experience. Consider the famous case of Dora, an intelligent, passionate young woman brought to Freud by her father after she objected to being offered as a sexual consolation prize to her father's friend, whose wife was having an affair with Dora's father. When Dora expressed outrage at being treated as an object to be exchanged between men, Freud interpreted her reaction not as a legitimate response to objectification, but as evidence of her repressed desire for the men involved. His analysis focused on uncovering her supposedly hidden desires for these older men, rather than validating her explicit desire not to be traded as a sexual pawn in their marital arrangements. When Dora eventually terminated her treatment with Freud, an assertion of autonomy in itself, he interpreted this as resistance rather than as a reasonable response to an interpretation that fundamentally misrecognized her experience. If these historical examples are helping you understand how female desire has been systematically misread even within progressive psychological frameworks, please consider leaving a like on this video to help others discover these perspectives. You already know this, but we're not ready to understand ourselves alone. The human mind is vast, complex, and often frightening to explore without guidance. If this content is helping you see yourself more clearly, if these insights about Freud's work are bringing light to parts of yourself you've kept hidden, then consider subscribing to this channel. This is not just another psychology channel. This is a space where we explore the depths of human nature together, where we take the most profound concepts from psychoanalysis and make them accessible, practical, and deeply personal. Every video here is designed to help you understand, not just theory, but yourself, your patterns, your fears, your desires, the invisible forces that have been shaping your choices without your awareness. When you subscribe, you are making a commitment to yourself. You are saying that you are ready to look deeper, to understand more, to stop running from the truth of who you are. And I promise you this, I will be here every week, bringing you insights that matter, explanations that actually make sense, and perspectives that can genuinely change how you see yourself and the world around you. This journey of self-understanding is not easy. Freud knew this. He spent his entire life mapping the human psyche precisely because he understood how lost we can feel inside our own minds. But you do not have to walk this path alone. Hit that subscribe button. Turn on notifications. Become part of a community of people who have decided that understanding themselves is worth the discomfort, worth the effort, worth the time. Because at the end of the day, the most important relationship you will ever have is the one with yourself, and that relationship deserves your attention, your curiosity, and your courage. So subscribe now, and let's continue this exploration together. Your future self will thank you for taking this step today. The misreading of female desire evident in Freud's theories isn't merely of historical interest, but continues to shape how female psychology is understood and addressed in contemporary contexts. Despite significant advances in feminist psychology and gender theory, many of Freud's fundamental assumptions about female development and desire persist in modified forms within both professional and popular understandings of women's psychology. We continue to see female desire interpreted primarily through relational lenses, focused on how women desire connection, nurturing relationships, or validation from others rather than how they might desire achievement, impact, pleasure, power, or recognition for themselves. While connection and relationship are indeed important aspects of many women's experience, as they are for many men, the persistent emphasis on these dimensions to the exclusion of others reflects ongoing biases in how we conceptualize gender and desire. These biases don't just affect theoretical understanding, but have practical consequences for how women's distress is interpreted and treated. When women express ambivalence about motherhood, dissatisfaction with limiting relationships, or desire for greater autonomy, these expressions are still often pathologized or interpreted as signs of neurosis, selfishness, or failed feminine development, rather than as legitimate responses to constraining social arrangements. Similarly, women's anger at social injustice or exploitation continues to be interpreted as personal bitterness, inappropriate aggression, or maladjustment rather than as a rational response to actual conditions. These interpretive patterns reveal how psychological theories, even when they have evolved significantly from Freud's original formulations, continue to function in ways that subtly pathologize women's resistance to traditional gender arrangements. The persistence of these patterns raises important questions about how psychology as a discipline might develop more accurate and liberating understandings of female desire and development. This evolution requires not just adding women's perspectives to existing frameworks, but fundamentally reconsidering the assumptions underlying psychological theory itself. What would psychological theory look like if it started from female experience rather than treating it as a secondary variation on male development? How might our understanding of desire, autonomy, relationship, and development transform if women's subjectivity were centered rather than marginalized? These questions aren't about creating a separate female psychology, but about developing more comprehensive theories that account for the full range of human experience rather than privileging particular gendered patterns as universal. This reconsideration has already begun through the work of feminist psychologists, relational theorists, and other scholars who have challenged traditional psychological frameworks. Theorists like Carol Gilligan, Jean Baker Miller, Jessica Benjamin, and many others have developed approaches that take women's experiences seriously as sources of psychological insight rather than as deviations from male norms. These perspectives don't reject Freud's contributions entirely, but transform them by challenging their gendered assumptions and expanding their explanatory power to better account for diverse human experiences. This work represents not a rejection of psychological theory, but its evolution toward greater accuracy, inclusivity, and liberating potential. Share this video with someone who might benefit from understanding how female desire has been systematically misread throughout the history of psychology. They might find validation for experiences they've struggled to articulate within conventional frameworks. What might we learn by taking seriously the female desire that Freud could never fully admit, the desire for recognition as an autonomous subject with primary rather than derivative desires? Perhaps most fundamentally, we might develop a more accurate understanding of how human desire functions across genders. Despite the persistent framing of female desire as uniquely relational, emotional, and oriented toward connection, extensive research suggests that autonomy, agency, impact, and recognition are fundamental human needs, regardless of gender. The difference lies not in the presence or absence of these desires, but in their social acceptance and support. When women express these desires directly, they often face social penalties and pathologizing interpretations that men typically don't encounter for similar expressions. This creates powerful incentives for women to channel their desires for autonomy and recognition through more socially acceptable avenues, often through supporting others' achievements or pursuing impact through relational means, leading to the impression that women's desires are fundamentally different rather than differently expressed due to social constraints. This understanding doesn't deny the reality or value of connection and relationship in human experience. These are indeed essential dimensions of well-being across genders, but it challenges the false dichotomy that positions agency and connection as opposing values aligned with masculine and feminine development respectively. In reality, healthy human development of any gender involves both agency and connection, both autonomy and relationship. The persistent gendering of these dimensions reflects social arrangements that have benefited from positioning women as relationship specialists and men as agency specialists, rather than encouraging the development of both capacities across genders. A more integrated understanding recognizes that connection without agency becomes self-abnegation, while agency without connection becomes isolation, neither representing optimal human development regardless of gender. This integrated perspective allows us to reconsider not just female desire, but human desire more broadly. It suggests that many of the patterns interpreted as distinctly feminine psychology might better be understood as human responses to particular social positions and power arrangements. When people of any gender occupy positions where direct expressions of agency are punished or restricted, they typically develop more indirect routes to efficacy and recognition, often through relationship, caregiving, or behind-the-scenes influence. These patterns reflect not innate psychological differences, but adaptive responses to power differentials. Understanding this dynamic allows us to distinguish between genuine differences in desire and variation in how similar desires are expressed under different social conditions. As we move toward concluding our exploration of the female desire Freud could never fully admit, it's worth considering what his blindness to this desire reveals about the relationship between psychological theory and social power more generally. Freud's inability to fully recognize or theorize women's autonomous desire wasn't simply a personal limitation, but reflected the profound difficulty of developing truly liberating psychological insights from within unexamined social arrangements. His theories, revolutionary as they were in many respects, ultimately functioned to explain and in some ways naturalize existing gender hierarchies rather than to fundamentally challenge them. This pattern reveals the persistent risk that even ostensibly objective or scientific psychological theories will reflect and reinforce the social arrangements from which they emerge, unless those arrangements are themselves subjected to critical examination. Yet Freud's work, despite its limitations, also demonstrates the potential for psychological theory to evolve beyond its original constraints. The psychoanalytic tradition he founded has been continuously reinterpreted, challenged, and transformed by successive generations of theorists, many of them women who recognized both the value and the limitations of Freud's original insights. This ongoing evolution suggests that psychological theory, while always shaped by its social context, isn't determined by it, that through critical engagement, dialogue across difference, and genuine openness to experiences that challenge existing frameworks, our understanding can gradually become more inclusive and liberating. The secret female desire that Freud could never fully admit may, paradoxically, be driving the evolution of the very theoretical traditions he established, as women's insistence on recognition as full subjects with primary desires gradually transforms how we understand not just female psychology but human psychology in all its complexity.